Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We've got a fantastic, very easy, wink, wink, lesson today around collections of data, okay? We learned about loops last time. There is the wiki with the recorded class up on the Teams channel here. Please refer back to that if you have missed the class or need to review. Anyone who has done those activities, seen the class and reviewed, does anyone have any questions about loops? For those of you watching later, there were no questions, only blank stares. Okay, today we are going to talk about collections. So to start, I'm going to give you a really annoying assignment that you don't have to do. Please don't take time to do it. But I want you to create a variable for every letter in the alphabet and then store all of the letters in the alphabet in those variables. Okay? Please do that. Don't do that. All right. Very annoying, right? 26 letters in the alphabet. You'd have to go and declare 26 variables to store all of them. Not something I want to spend my time doing, because you know when Obama comes back to office, we're going to have 27 letters in the alphabet. And things will change. I'm just kidding. Not a political statement. Okay, we're going to learn a better way today. We're going to learn, so far we've created variables that store a single value. And today we're going to declare variables that can hold many values. And these are called collections. Okay? A collection, first off, remember back to our string learning. We said that a string is just a collection of characters, right? If you think about it, any sentence, any book, any play script is just a collection of characters, right? Organized, ordered. The order does matter, right? We don't want to get the script for the play and then have all of the A's appear first in the script, because then what would the play be like? It'd be like, sorry. Okay, so an ordered collection is a string, and today we're going to learn how to put anything into a collection, all right? So a collection is a group, an ordered group of data, okay? Generally speaking, this isn't always true, but generally speaking, a collection can hold one type of data, all right? So if let's see, a string is a collection of characters. All of the data in that collection have the same data type, right? Car or char, or however you want to pronounce it. All right, a collection holds one data type, generally speaking. Of course, like all things computer science, not always. Okay, a collection also has a length, right? If I were to ask you for how many characters there are in the alphabet in Spanish, you of course would say
32.
Well, it has a length, right? Maybe we don't know it, but there is a length. So the collection has a length, okay? And the collection is either fixed length or variable length. And let's talk about what that means, all right? A fixed length collection is a sheet of lined paper. That sheet of lined paper has exactly 34 lines on it. You cannot add more lines. You can add less. You can add less lines, right, by cutting it or whatever. But think of a fixed length of collection like a lined sheet of paper. You can't add more than 34 things to each, or 34 things if you're putting one thing on each line. Okay? A variable length collection means it's a collection that can grow in size, right? A variable length collection would be like a collection of baseball cards. You can just keep adding baseball cards to your collection. The length of your collection, the size of your collection keeps growing. Little brother comes along and takes them out to the sandbox. The length of your collection can decrease, and so forth, all right? So know that there are fixed length collections and variable length collections. There are lots of collection types in C#. We're going to focus on only two of them. We're going to focus on arrays and lists today, but just know there are lots of different collection structures. For example, a stack. Think of a stack of dinner plates. When you need a dinner plate, well, when you're putting the dishes away, where do the plates go? They go on the top, in the cupboard. Yes, thank you. They go in the cupboard, and then relative to the other plates, Do you lift up the stack of plates every time, put a plate under, and then put the stack back down? No. No. We're Americans, right? Or Canadians. So yes, a stack is a collection that is called a first in, first out collection. So it's like a stack of dinner plates. When you're putting things on the stack, they go on the top. The first time you need something from that collection, you take it off of the top. We're not going to focus on stacks today, but just know that that is a collection type in C#. Think of a queue. So a queue is like the concessions line at the movie theater, right? They have cordons on all sides. You enter, and you enter in the back, and the person in the front gets served, right? And people move through the queue. So it is a first in, last out collection, right? That's a collection in type in C#. A dictionary basically is a collection that says you can define the key for a piece of data, right? So think of an actual dictionary like a book, right? The key for the data in the dictionary is a word, and the data is the definition of the word. That's a collection type in C#. We're not going to focus on it today. Just know that there are lots of collection types, but we are going to focus on arrays and lists, okay? An array is a fixed length collection, right? Everybody remember a fixed length collection is like the lined sheet of paper. You create an array, and the array can never grow in size. All right, so I want to show you, first off on the wiki, I've got all of these examples that I'm about to go through pasted as images, so you can't copy the text, ha 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 ha. You always have to type it. Okay, but an array, yeah, there's a couple parts to an array. All right, very first, we are going to create an array by saying the data type that the array can hold. Remember, a collection or an array can hold multiple values of the same type. So this array is going to hold ints, right? This looks very familiar to us from all of the variables that we've declared throughout the class. And here's where it gets crazy. Oh, square brackets, boom. All right, so a data type immediately followed by square brackets says, this is a collection, this will be a group, this will be a set, this will be an array of ints, not just a single int, right? And then we give it a name, just like other variables. Okay, so this is very similar to creating an int variable, except the square brackets. The square brackets tell us that this is going to be an array. Okay, I keep saying that an array is a fixed length. Well, first off, when we create an array, we use the new keyword. This is a keyword in C# that basically means save me some of that memory over there, right? When we get to a line of code that says new, we're saying save me this much memory. Okay, we don't have to do that when we're declaring variables because the compiler knows how big or how much memory it needs to reserve for an int, right, or a bool. Okay, so we use the new keyword. We repeat the data type here, the brackets, and then this is important, we declare how big the collection is going to be. This array will only ever hold up to 10 elements. Please allow me to zoom in. Zooming in. Is that okay in the back? Okay. All right, so a data type, square brackets to say I'm doing an array, a variable name. We use the new keyword, repeat the data type, square brackets again, but this time we say how big the array is going to be. This is called an explicitly defined array. I have explicitly said that this array will hold 10 elements, okay? So the next thing we want to do is start putting data into our array. Remember, we've talked about indexes, right? What's an index? Anybody remember that? Yeah, exactly right. An index is where an element is in relation to the collection, right? So remember on strings day, we wanted to get the character that was at index 0 of a string, for example. And that basically gives us the first character in the string, right? So the index operator are the square brackets, all right? I want to put something into the array in the first position, so I use square brackets and an index, right? So I'm saying go to the numbers array, and at index 0, I want to stuff in a value, this value. Name that number. Can't do it. Okay, now we're in int. Okay, this is how you put elements in an array. You refer to the array by name. You use square brackets. Inside of square brackets, you say, I want it to put it at this position in the array, and then the assignment operator and a value to put into the array. All right, let's do something real quick. I want to do a for loop. Everybody remembers for loops, our old friend and pal. I want to go through now and I hate you. I want to go through and print out all of the elements in the array, okay? The way I'm going to do that is refer to the array by name, square brackets, and instead of an index, I'm going to put a variable in there. So this is going to be crazy, right? The loop is going to increment the I variable, and every time it increments, I'm going to repeat the statements here inside of curly brackets, and I'm going to say, go to the numbers array, take the current value of I, grab me the value at that index, and then print it out to the console. So can anyone predict for me what will be printed out to the console when we run this program? Let's check it out. .ment is not a command. Okay, we only put one number in there, but we printed out 10. What the heck? Remember that ints have a default value of 0, right? So even though we only stored one number in our array, this array has 10 numbers in it. It's got one number that we assigned and 9 default values for int, okay? I can keep stuffing numbers in the numbers array. Okay, everybody see what's going on here? Anyone have any questions about creating arrays or putting elements inside of an array or accessing stuff from an array? Any questions at all?
So if the index is not assigned to a value, then the default is 0?
So if the variable, what we have here are 10 int variables, right? Each of those int variables have an index. So if the value or the variable at the index doesn't have a value, it gets the default value, which is 0. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions? I'm so close to this microphone. The audio is going to be so good. Oh. Okay, so this is an array. We've talked about creating an array explicitly. Let's talk about creating an array implicitly, okay? I'm going to delete all this, and now, well, I'm going to delete everything but this line. Okay, here we have, how big is this array? Someone tell me, how many numbers can it hold? 10, okay. You know that because inside of square brackets I said this array should hold 10 numbers, all right? There's another way to declare arrays, and that instead of explicitly saying what size I want, I can specify a list of values to store in the array by going like this. And always, of course, remember the assignment operator. Okay, so how many numbers will numbers hold?
10.
Still 10. How many numbers will more numbers hold? Okay, what numbers are in the numbers array after line 9 is executed?
According to their
A whole bunch of zeros. 10 zeros. What numbers are stored in the more numbers array after line 10? We have 1 through 10, 0 through 9. Any other? Let's do it. Let's do this.
What is the dot length?
The question is, what does the dot length do? That is something that is built in to C# arrays. This will tell me what is the length of your array. So the length of the array basically says how big is this array? Not how many numbers are stored inside of it, but how big, right? What's the length of this array, do you think?
11.
The length of the first array is 10. The length of the second array is 10. There are 10 spaces inside of this array. They just all happen to hold the default value 0. There are 10 spaces inside of this array with numbers that we have assigned, right? So the question was, what will be printed out here when I go through more numbers? The answer is numbers 1 through 10, okay? That's because I explicitly said, or implicitly, I implied that I want this array to be of size 10 when I provided it a list of 10 numbers. I just took it a step further and also said, and put these 10 numbers inside of the array in this order, okay?
So if you take out one of those numbers, the value would then be 0 for that? Like if you only give it 9 numbers?
If I only give it 9 numbers,
It's gonna do
good
0
question.
through-
You're thinking we're going to get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9?
Or 1 through 9 and then 0.
1 through 9 and a 0? Let's boogie.
Well, no, you don't get 9 because you're not telling it that there's a 10 value.
Exactly right. I have implicitly said I want this array to be of size 9 because I've only provided you with 9 numbers. Nowhere did I say I want this array to be of size 10, where, like I did explicitly up here.
So it's doing both those things because you didn't put anything in the square brackets, but then included the information in the curly
That's right.
brackets.
If I didn't do either, if I didn't explicitly say or implicitly say how big I want my array to be, then Visual Studio starts yelling at me. You can't do that. Array creation must have array size, the number, or array initializer, the pre-specified list of numbers.
So one allows you to just set a range of how big that array is going to be. The other sets the range and allows you to set
Exactly right.
a static value.
It can imply how big the range should be from the numbers that I provided it. Okay? You have to specify a size when you're creating an array. That is not going to be true when we create lists, because lists are a variable length collection and can grow and shrink. Okay? But arrays are a little rigid. They require a length when they are declared.
One thought, on line 10, if you explicitly declared the length of the array and then still left those just those 9 numbers, would it then just fill in the last place with a 0, or
Well,
does it go both ways?
it's saying, well, you're explicitly telling me 10, but you're implicitly telling me 9. So which do you want, buddy?
Okay, so
Yeah.
everything both.
It doesn't like that. I could, as long as these match up, do that. But why, right? I'm going to implicitly and explicitly tell you. Sometimes I need that, right? I need all the hints and the directness, but C# doesn't. Bless you, C#. Okay. You can put elements into an array here. This is an empty array with all zeros. This is an array with numbers 1 through 10. Okay, I can come in and actually change the values in the array, right? I can say more numbers at index 5, so this will be the 6th number, remember, because indexes on arrays are 0-based. I want you to now hold 0, the default value for an int. So I'm essentially taking 6 out of the array by reassigning it, right? And I could do this many times, right? It's not a new variable. The variable stays the same. It's 1 in a collection of variables. I'm just changing the value, okay? So any predictions on what will be printed out here?
2, 4, 5, 1, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Very good. Yep. I replaced the 6th element at index 5, and then I did it again, and voila. Okay. So we've covered creating an array, adding elements to array, accessing elements in array, removing and replacing elements in array. Does anyone have questions about arrays before we move on to lists?
Is there a reason you would want to put some more numbers in, not just go to the original code and change the number?
So you're kind of future-proofing your program, if I understand. You're saying maybe make the array really big to start, so that I don't have to go back and change it when I need a bigger array. Is that what you're saying?
Well, like where you change the 1, change it to a 1, why wouldn't you just go to your original
Oh,
1 and just change it?
I
change
could.
the 6 to a 1.
it would essentially be the same thing. Yep, I definitely could do that. This is just for the purposes of demonstration of showing how to reassign a value that's part of an array. Yep.
What's like the practical use of this?
Of an array?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So so the question was, what's the practical use of array or just collections in general? Okay. So I'm not going to get on to my health equity portal right now because you would see all of my deepest, darkest information. But if you were to go home and do that with a blanket over the monitor so only you could see and you'd have privacy, you could go on to like the HSA transactions page. Everyone familiar with that? Okay. The HSA transaction page is a collection of HSA transactions, right? So it's a little more complicated, the type of data that that collection holds, right? And that's something we will learn when we go over classes. But collections of data are the meat and potatoes of programming today, right? A file comes into our system with a bunch of contributions. We read it in and we store it in memory in a collection, right? We don't want to create a variable for every line of a file because how many lines are in the files? It's not fixed length, right? Imagine if we at Health Equity were like, you can send us a contribution file, but it has to have exactly 1,000 lines in it or less. We'll give you the or less, right? Right, so collections of data are super important. Other things like, let's see, what's a mobile app consideration like a password storage manager, right, would have a collection of passwords that can grow. Everybody familiar with the concept of password managers? I don't want to remember every password for every website that I visit, so I include my password into this password manager and I store it in a collection, right? Lots of applications here. It's a little, you're right, these are silly examples and no one's going to pay you money to store an array of 10 numbers, right? Because any fourth grader could do that. But we're learning about collections, simple demos, all right? That answer your question? Okay, very good. Let's move on. Let's move on to lists. So if an array is a fixed length collection, a list is a variable length collection. I can create a list. I don't have to specify the size, and then I can add elements to that list for the rest of my stinking life, all right? So let's do this. Very first, when we create a list, we use the list keyword. And instead of square brackets or curly brackets, we are going to use angle brackets, okay? Angle brackets, and inside of the angle brackets, I specify what type of data I want my list to hold, okay? And then I give it a name. I use the new keyword once again because I'm saying save me some of that memory. And then I specify one more time the type of list that I'm creating and open close parentheses, okay? And the reason Visual Studio is yelling at me right now, I go over this in the wiki, is that we are missing a using statement to make our programs as skinny as possible and not include a bunch of extra code. C# doesn't include every collection type in our programs, but by saying using system.collections.generic, I have access to the code that makes up lists, okay? And this is all you need to create a list, okay? Notice, how big is this list?
Unknown.
Unknown. Well, 0 is the answer, right? But this, because lists are variable length, I don't have to specify how big it is. I'm going to make this list grow. I'm going to make this list grow to 1,000,000. The way I add to a list is by referring to the name of the list and then doing a dot add, parentheses, whatever I want to add. I'm doing strings here, but I'm trying to add numbers, so I'm going to change the type of my list to be an int list. So let's walk through what's about to happen here. I create a list. It is of size 0. I'm going to create this list where I loop through, looks like 10 million times. Okay, and then for every number between 0 and 10 million, I'm going to add it to the list, right? Variable size, variable length collection list. They're very flexible. Maybe you're asking yourself, well, why would I ever use an array versus a list? And it's a memory management thing. So the reason lists are variable length is when you store a value that is part of a list, you have the value, and then you're storing 2 other pieces of information, a pointer, a memory address to the next item in the list, and a pointer or a memory location to the previous item in the list. Whereas with an array, it's just the value, right? So a list is going to take up more memory, but it's more convenient for a programmer, so you decide. If you've got unlimited resources like we do at Health Equity, use a list within a list within a list. Right? So after this is done, I'm going to do a console.writeLine. I can access the length of the list again by doing count instead of length. Any predictions on what will be outputted to the program or to the terminal?
And
10 million pinky to mouth. Right? That's because I went through, I created this list, I added 10 million items to it, and then I output the count of items in this list to the console, right? So I hope I've driven home the fact that lists can grow over time. Okay, any questions about creating a list or adding items to a list? Let's talk about accessing elements inside of a list, all right? I have gone through and added 10 million numbers to this list, and I want to get one of the numbers out of it, right? And it's very similar to accessing an element inside of an array. I can refer to it with square brackets and an index number. Who can predict what will be written out to the console here? We have one guess, 456,456. Any other guesses?
No, yeah, 5 because you start with 0.
Okay. So the reason we get this number is because we're counting starting with 0. 0 is actually a value in our list. So the very first item in this list is the number 0. You and I don't count this way, right? When someone's like, count to 10, you're not like 0, 1, 2, right? But we made this loop count this way. Got some confused looks out there. Anybody?
Wouldn't it be the opposite?
Nope. Let's walk through this loop. Very first thing, we declare this variable I, value of 0. We say 0 less than 10 million. Then we come down here and execute everything in curly brackets. We say add to the list the value of I, which is 0. And then we come up and increment. And we say I is now 1.
So the first item, item 1 is 0.
Mm-hmm. The thing at index 0 is 0.
So shouldn't item 456,456 be number 456,455?
Nope. Nope, because we started counting by 0. We don't usually do this. If we modeled us counting and starting at 1, then what you're saying would be true. I don't feel like you believe me.
No.
Okay, we'll chat more about that. Let's get through this and get to the coding assignments here. Okay, a few other things. So because lists are variable length and they can grow, this list just swelled or swole, I don't know, to size 10 million. I can remove things, right? So I can come through and I'm going to actually write another loop. And I'm going to reset this so I don't cause any problems here. Sorry, count is for lists, length is for arrays. It's not confusing at all. All right, in here I want to say well, I'm not going to be able to do this. Can't do it with loop. You can't loop through something and remove it. It's like building your house on the sand. I don't know. Sunday school. Students.remove. To remove something, you specify not the index you want to remove, but the number you want to remove. So this line of code right here is going to take the students list and it's going to remove the first occurrence of the number 456,456, right? This is how you remove stuff. If we had data that repeated, you could do a remove all to remove all occurrences. So that's removing, and then replacing is very similar. I could use square brackets to access element number 456,456 and store a 0 there, right? So we would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 456,455, 0, 456,457, right? This is me replacing an item in the list. Okay, any questions about removing or replacing? Okay, the last thing I want to chat with you about, you remember on loop day, you had burning questions like, Ben, why did you skip a for each loop? We're going to skip this one until we cover arrays. The reason we skip that is because for each loops are built to work with collections. It's a super simple, easy way. I've been writing these for loops and secretly hating myself for doing it because the for each loops allow us to easily work with arrays, all right? So I'm going to, first off, I'm going to bring this loop, now I'm going to do something else. So I'm going to create a list of actual students here. And I'm going to say students.add Michelle 2 L's, students.add Shelly 1E, Braden, Gaia.
I'm just more impressed that you spelled my name right.
Okay.
You spelled it the right way. You spelled it the right way. Thank you.
My bad. My bad. Yep. All right. I've got this list. What is the count of this list after line 14? 4. Okay. Let me show you about a for each loop. It's super easy to work with collections. I just say for each. I declare a variable. And then I say for each variable inside of this collection, right? So it takes this collection, takes all of the values in it, and then does one iteration of the loop for each value in the loop, right? I didn't have to declare a counting variable. I don't have to increment a counting variable. I just say for each. I'm declaring a new variable right here because for each iteration of the loop, it's going to take the next element out of students and put it in the string name, right? So now I can do a console.write line. My favorite student is plus name. Any predictions on what will be output here? Bold prediction, yes. So it produced the sentence for each element in our array, and that is the for each loop. Much simpler, much easier to read code than for int I is equal to 0, wah, 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 wah. Right? Any questions about for each loops? Okay, we've got an unprecedented 17 minutes left to work on the coding practice assignments. Okay, I've got 3 for you, easy, medium, and hard. The first one is I want you to create an array for all of the days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and so forth, all the days of the week. And then I want you to create another array with a little message that will be mapped to each day of the week. For example, Sunday in our first array occupies index 0, the element at index 0. I want you to create another array that has messages for those days. So for example, in my messages array, I created the message fun day, right? So element 0 in the first array is Sunday, element 0 in the second array is fun day. Then I want you to write a loop that takes the elements from each array and creates a message, right? So if I did Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and fun day sucks tacos, I would expect to see messages like Sunday fun day, Monday sucks, and Tuesday tacos. Does anyone have any questions about this coding assignment?
We do it in reverse orders, have the comment first and then.
Yeah, if you want to show off, that's fine. Yeah. Any actual questions about the easy coding assignment? Okay. Okay, the moderate coding assignment is to create a program that helps you manage a shopping list. So I want you to prompt the user and say something like, hey, let's create a shopping list. And the user will type an item into the console. And when they hit enter, it's added to the shopping list. And then I want you to prompt the user, do you want to add another item? They will either type another item or press exit, right? Or type exit. If they type exit, I want you to I want you to print out the contents of the shopping list and then close the program. But I want you to accept as many items on the shopping list as possible, right? Could you imagine if the shopping list could only be 10 items per trip? You'd save money. Yeah. You'd be like 400 pounds of beef, right? So a shopping list should be of variable length, hint wink, hint.com, right? So good luck on that program. And finally, the hard program is, there's a concept that we didn't cover because it's advanced. It's called multi-dimensional arrays, which is basically a way of saying an array within an array within an array, or like I like to call it, arrayception. Okay, I want you to take the program from yesterday that produced a nicely formatted multiplication table, and instead of nicely formatting it out to the console, I want you to store it in a 2-dimensional array. And then I want you to print out the highest number and the lowest number, which sounds a little daunting right now, but once you understand 2-dimensional arrays, it will be soups easy.
Question.
Question.
You had us do 2 multiplication tables.
the hard multiplication table, the way of pain.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, any other questions before we dive in on this on these coding assignments? For the multidimensional array one, I did include an article that shows you about multidimensional arrays. Down here at the bottom, you will have to read that just because I didn't want to cover that today, because it's crazy. Arrayception. All right. Well, let's get going on coding assignments. I'll come around and answer questions or help you with your code as needed.